morning, everyone. Hope you all safe with a good health. With you, Ms. Dina Al-Badri, science teacher for grade 6. Today we will complete our lesson, energy and matter in ecosystems. So, how does matter move through ecosystems? We said that water evaporates from the Earth's surface, enter the atmosphere, and become clouds, and fall back to the Earth's surface. By the way, we call this part like the water cycle. Did you remember the water cycle? So the water evaporates from the Earth's surface, enter the atmosphere, becomes clouds, and falls back to the Earth's surface. Carbon and nitrogen have a cycle through an ecosystem, going from producer to consumer to decomposer and back to producer again. Okay, so today we will study the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, and water cycle. Matter leaves some ecosystems and enter other ecosystems. Because matter can enter and leave an ecosystem, it's called an open system. So when the matter moves freely in the ecosystem, we call this system open system. The movement of the water between the oceans, atmosphere, land, and living things is known as the water cycle. So this is the meaning for the water cycle. What is the meaning of the water cycle? The movement of the water between oceans, atmosphere, land, and living things is known as the water cycle. Water cycle or water can enter the atmosphere by evaporation, transpiration, and respiration. Okay, so the water, how the water enter the ecosystem, or the atmosphere? By evaporation, transpiration, and respiration. During evaporation, the sun's heat causes water to change from liquid to vapors. Plants release water vapor from their leaves in transpiration. So what is the meaning of evaporation? The sun's heat causes the water to change from liquid to water vapor. What is the meaning of transpiration that you see here? What is the meaning of this word? Plants release water vapor from their leaves in transpiration. It is an opening part in the plant which helps the water vapor to goes up from the plant. Organisms release water as waste during respiration. When we breathe in, we take an oxygen. When we breathe out, we take up or breathe out carbon dioxide gas and water vapor. So organisms release water as waste during respiration. In condensation process, water vapor return again to be a liquid. The water that falls from the atmosphere to the land and the ocean is precipitation. Okay, so what do you mean of condensation? What is the difference between condensation and precipitation? Condensation, water vapor change to be liquid again by cooling. And precipitation, it means the water that falls from the atmosphere to the land again, we call it a precipitation. The precipitation that falls on land and flow into streams and rivers, we call it runoff. So the water of precipitation, we call it a runoff. The water that seeps into the ground and is stored underground is called groundwater. It will flow back into the soil, streams, rivers, and ocean. Okay, you have to know the difference between groundwater and runoff. So we talk the water cycle. All the previous part is the water cycle. Now we will talk in details about nitrogen cycle. What is the meaning of nitrogen cycle? It means that the nitrogen will return back to the ecosystem again. The movement of nitrogen between the environment and living thing is called the nitrogen cycle. When I ask you what is the meaning of the nitrogen cycle, it is the movement of nitrogen between the environment and living things. We know that in the soil there is bacteria. This bacteria in the soil can change nitrogen gas from the air into forms that plants can use. This process is called nitrogen fixation. So when the bacteria in the soil help the nitrogen gas from the air to enter the plant, we call this process nitrogen fixation. Plants take in and use fixed nitrogen. Consumers then take this nitrogen they need by eating plants or other organisms. Okay, so the plants take fixed nitrogen, and consumer get this fixed nitrogen by eating the plants, and so on. What is the nitrogen cycle? When organisms die, decomposers break down their remains and release a form of nitrogen into the soil that plant can use. Finally, certain types of bacteria in the soil can convert nitrogen into a gas which is returned to the atmosphere again. Okay, so this is the nitrogen cycle. It is the cycle between environment and living things. What is the carbon cycle? Carbon is an important building block of organism. It's an important chemical material inside your body. Carbon is found in food, atmosphere, water, rock, soil, organism, and fossil fuels. Carbon moves through organism and between organism and the physical environment in the carbon cycle. So the carbon can transfer from all this part: atmosphere, water, rocks, soil, organism, and fossil fuels to the living organism and vice versa. Okay, so carbon moves through the organism and between organism and the physical environment in the carbon cycle. During the photosynthesis process, producer makes sugar that contain carbon. During cellular respiration, sugar are broken down to release energy, carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so combustion is the burning of the material. The burning of one's living materials release carbon dioxide, water, heat, and other material. So how the carbon produced from the combustion? Okay, the burning of any living materials release carbon dioxide, water, heat, and other material. Decomposition breaks down dead organisms and wastes. Decomposers get energy from this material by respiration. Okay, that's all. So today we will talk about water cycle, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle. Okay, in this video you are going to watch the difference between these three cycles. Hope you all understand. Thank you.
Nitrogen is essential to life. Plants and animals need nitrogen to make proteins, and proteins are the building blocks of cells and therefore life. Nitrogen makes up 78% of the air. However, neither plants nor animals can take nitrogen directly from the air because nitrogen is so unreactive. However, plants are able to take nitrogen compounds such as nitrates from the soil, and then animals eat these plants, therefore providing animals with a source of nitrogen. In this video, we're going to look at the nitrogen cycle. This is the movement of nitrogen through the environment. Nitrogen is continually cycled through the air, soil, and living things. The process of nitrogen in the atmosphere being turned into nitrogen in the soils is called fixing. Here are 4 different ways in which nitrogen fixing occurs naturally. Firstly, nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil turns nitrogen from the air into nitrates, which the plants can then absorb. Some plants, such as the legume family, which includes peas, beans and clover, have these nitrogen fixing bacteria in their root nodules. Secondly, decomposers in the soils break down animal excretion in dead organisms, returning nitrogen back to the soil as ammonia. The ammonia turns firstly into nitrite, and then nitrifying bacteria in the soils turns the nitrite into nitrate. Thirdly, lightning can cause chemical reactions in the atmosphere, resulting in nitrogen reacting with oxygen to produce nitrous oxide. The nitrous oxide then reacts with more oxygen and dissolves in rainwater to make nitrous acid. This rainwater containing nitrous acid increases the amount of nitrate in the soil. Burning fossil fuels also adds nitrous oxide to the atmosphere, resulting in nitric acid. But this is of course not a natural way of nitrogen fixing. And finally, in the oceans, many species of blue-green algae, also called cyanobacteria, can fix nitrogen. This then provides sources of nitrogen to aquatic animals, and the nitrogen goes around a similar cycle to what happens on land. These are the natural ways through which nitrogen fixing occurs. The Haber process, which is how fertilizers are made, makes up approximately 30% of the nitrogen fixing. Because nitrogen is essential for making proteins, proteins are essential for cell production. Cell production is how growth occurs. Fertilizers are therefore used to increase the nitrates in the soil to maximize plant growth. Watch our videos on the Haber process to learn more about this. And as I mentioned earlier, burning fossil fuels also adds nitrous oxide to the atmosphere, which dissolves in rainwater to make nitric acid, which then adds nitrates to the soils. This isn't as good as it sounds. It upsets the balance of the natural nitrogen cycle, polluting ecosystems and altering the ecology of entire regions. Too much nitrogen in the soil makes it more acidic. The nitrogen also passes into rivers and lakes where it's considered a pollutant. In some conditions, such as waterlogged soils, denitrifying bacteria in the soil break down nitrates and return nitrogen back to the air. This reduces the fertility of the soil. So from this video, you should now understand how the nitrogen cycle works. Nitrogen is essential to life, and so needs to be fixed in nitrates for plants and therefore animals to access it. Nitrogen is continually cycled through the air, soil, living things and water systems.
The carbon cycle. All elements and some compounds have their natural cycle in nature, for example, the water cycle. Matter is cycled using energy, usually from the sun. And in this video, we'll be considering the carbon cycle. We will see how photosynthesis and respiration, see the linked video, help carbon to be cycled in nature, again using energy from the sun, and we will also see the part played by mankind when we use fossil fuels. First of all, the natural carbon cycle. Can you remember what the process is called where plants capture carbon and give off oxygen? Pause the video whilst you think. Did you remember that this process is called photosynthesis? The carbon is used to build up new plant material. Animals eat the plants or other animals to build up their bodies. To obtain energy for all these living processes, plants and animals take in oxygen and rejoin it with the carbohydrates, so returning the carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Do you remember what this process is called? Pause the video. This process is called respiration. Now, let's put some details into this. As they grow, all living things have to build up large polymer molecules from small molecules. Protein, for example, to make your skin and muscles and other organs, comes from joining amino acids together. Cellulose and starch to make the leaves, flowers, trunks, roots, and all parts of plants from joining sugars, and DNA to make the genes which control living things from the bases and the sugar and phosphate. Plants can make these simple molecules from the carbon they capture from photosynthesis, with added elements from the minerals they get from the soil. Animals, on the other hand, get their molecules ready-made when they eat plants or other animals, but first they have to break the food polymers back into the small molecules. Do you know what this process is called? Pause whilst you think of an answer. This is called digestion, breaking the food into little bits so it can get into our blood. All of this, of course, needs lots of energy. And living things get their energy from respiration. Some of the monomers, things like sugar, have to be rejoined with oxygen, and for us that is the principal use of the carbohydrates in our diet. The carbon dioxide gets back into the food web through photosynthesis.